What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
Ring that bell.
ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's podcast. A Thinking Man's podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's podcast. I'm Joseph PIRCHER, and with me, as always, my good friend Tommy Stiles. What's up, Tommy?
Joe, how we doing?
We're doing all right, man. I think this is this episode, I think, is something we've been kind of due to speak about in a longer form. And especially now we're kind of in the heart of contest season. I think it's something that everybody scrolling through Instagram or checking out, show photos, you see a lot of people that show up the same year after year. And so this episode, we are going to be discussing things to consider prior to getting on stage again or the next time. So I'll just kick it off. So one of the things that I think people miss out on when they are considering when am I competing again is just how long of a process it is to grow new muscle, and then two, how they underestimate how much they really need. So you have to consider things like if you're skipping trying to jump weight classes, or even go from like one division to the next, where maybe you're trying to go from bikini to wellness, or you're trying to go from light heavyweight to heavyweight, or heavyweight to super heavyweight. And then how balanced your actual physique is. All of this stuff needs to be considered. And I just see a lot of people that compete in a show in June, let's say, and then they do a 6 month off season, and then they basically have to do a 6 month prep, and then they compete again the following June. And it's like, as an enhanced male bodybuilder, where you nailed everything all year and you have at least average to above average genetics, you're talking about 6 months of off season, with two of those being like a post-show recovery from the prior show. You're talking about maybe 4 productive months. So at best, you're talking about you're 4 pounds of muscle better. Like, let's say if you were somebody that was, in a light heavyweight at 198, let's say, and you come back, now you have to go to heavyweight and face all those guys, and you're only 4 pounds heavier, you're 202. Like, how much different do you expect to look? And then the same can be said, this is the last little point I'll continue this opening rant with, but like, how far off are your weak body parts compared to the rest of your physique? So like for me, like I have glaring weaknesses where my arms, delts, upper chest all need to be like dramatically better compared to the rest of my physique. This is not just like a quick thing where it's like, your delts are good, but they need a little bit more. Like, no, like I need a complete overhaul. So because of that, it takes time. For guys that have more complete physiques, and it's like, maybe you only need to bring up one body part. Okay, maybe you can get away with an 8 or a 10 month off season and see some tangible improvements. But like, if you have to if you really need to improve your back, or you really need to improve your legs, or just generally, you just need overall time and size, like, man, I would really like to see, especially for male bodybuilders, like, and more so referencing guys that are actually in the bodybuilding division and the classic division, I would say too, like, man, give yourself a year to grow in between shows. So if you wind up competing on like a 18-month schedule or something like that, like, you can be proud of the difference that you've made from one show to a next. Like, to me, the whole point of bodybuilding, like just the word bodybuilding, what are we doing? We're building our body. To me, like, the only thing that we have control of is looking much different, looking like a different person from the last time every time that you get on stage. That should be like number one. Like you want to reset a new best, all these things, but you should look seriously different. And I think too many people like rush that process.
I agree. I mean, those are some good points. I think you need to have an honest assessment. We've kind of talked about this in previous episodes of where am I at? What's my training age? What's my PED exposure age? You and I have been training a long time and doing PEDs a moderately long time. Like if we were ever going to blow up in a 6-7 month period, it would have already happened.
It would have happened already, buddy. It's not in the cards.
It's not in the cards. So we need more time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of things, like we were talking off air, a lot of people, it's off-season bodybuilding is true bodybuilding. That's the monotony. Off-season is way more monotonous than prep. It is the same meals, it's the more regimented and rigid you can get with your routine, I think the better results you will get. At least that's how it's gone for me. So I think a lot of people they think too highly of themselves for how short or how long of an off season they need. I think when you're younger, it shouldn't even be a question. It should be, do a show. And then even in that prep, you should already know, like, all right, it's 2022. I'm prepping. I'm not competing again until 2024. Don't care what the circumstances are. There's no way I'm going to be remarkably better by turning around and competing again in 2023. Especially if like you're one of these younger people who's doing your first show, second show, third show, whatever. And like, yeah, there might be body parts that need to come up. And by now you might have found some strong points, but at the end of the day, you just need overall size and more time. And that's what I found with myself. I started as a middleweight in 2014, came back as a light heavyweight in 2016. And instead of competing in 2017, like I did, I should have taken that year off and not come back till 2018 because I really didn't I think I added like 9 pounds of muscle, but that I should have went from light heavyweight to heavyweight in 2018 instead of staying a light heavyweight. So that's like one thing I would do differently if, one of those things, if I knew then what I know now type approach. But then I took from 2017 all the way to 2021 off, and that yielded 27 pounds of stage weight. So I don't advise taking that much time off. I think that's a bit aggressive, but that wasn't my intent. But the point is like the more time you're away from the stage and actively bodybuilding, the better you will be the next time you get on stage.
Yeah, and that's the whole point, right? Like it's like you want to have these split photos of what your last showing looked like compared to your most recent one, and it's like, okay, I want to be bigger and in better conditioning. Like I could say that about every showing, about anybody could say that. So that's that's just what bodybuilding comes down to. And it's and we were talking about you too. I think talking about your individual circumstance would be a good one in this conversation, like where you're at currently, because you're kind of living through this right now. Like you're in the middle of what to consider whether or not like to compete next year. So like you said, you competed last year in 2021, competed at junior nationals. And then now you're like, okay, I had planned on 2023. Now I don't even know if that makes sense. So I want to hear from you. Like, I want to hear you talk about that because you're somebody, obviously, like we talked about, been training, competing, using PEDs, all these different things for a long time. And even so, like, you're not just haphazardly like, oh, this is an established physique, I can just compete whenever. Even someone at your level is like, hey, this is something that I really need to sit down and rationalize. So where are you at, with all of your thinking when you're trying to make a decision like this for yourself?
Well, I'm using because the goal is obviously we're in a very difficult time as open bodybuilders because the local regional level is just so decimated almost that potentially doing well and winning an overall may not mean you're ready for the next level. Winning 2 overalls may not mean you're ready for the next level. And that's just the way where we're at. There's nothing all you can do is get ready. You can't control that variable. If you prep for 20 weeks and 6 bodybuilders show up and, well, shit, I got a hand me down overall basically, because 5 of them didn't even take it seriously.
Right.
So that being said, like I did do junior nationals. I was able to look at the stage picks and look at myself next to other guys. And at the end of the day, it was like, I have a big frame. It just needs more size. There's no way around that. There's no way that I could do a prep, this year and be any better than I was last year. Maybe marginally better, like you said, maybe 2-3 pounds. Maybe if I peak differently, I come in leaner. That's not remarkable change to me. And even that, like 2023, like that's not that far away if you think about it. We're already in July come Saturday or Friday. So to me, am I going to be a legit super heavyweight in 2023, 1 year from now? I don't think so. I don't think I'm, for my height, I think I need to be big. Like I'm almost 5'11" with really long limbs. My ultimate physique, I think, is somewhere between the 250 and 260 pound stage weight. And that's not happening right now. I'm, low 250s off season. So that's not going to translate to stage weight. So I guess when I look
Tommy,
at it,
what do you think? So like you're in the mid 250s right now. What do you think? What do you think you would pull down to if you pulled it down right now, just for context? What were you last year?
I weighed in at 221. I was 218 the day of the show. And I could have been leaner. Definitely. I definitely could have been leaner. So that being said, I know I could make heavyweights. I don't know what it would look like, but I know I could get down to weigh in at 225 and then maybe load higher. I don't know how that would work, but
right.
Ideally,
like the next time that you get on stage, what are you hoping to be?
I mean,
ballpark.
If I could be, if I could weigh in at 240 slice, that's competitive. So Dante had this article he put out a long time ago. I don't even know when, but he basically gave a kind of like a metric of where you should be based off your height, what your body weight should be in the off season and how you should look. And for someone between like 5'9" and 6 foot, I think you take your height in inches and times it by 3.5. And that's the off-season body weight you should be able to not just get to, but should be able to hold. So that for me is 270. So I should be able to get to 270 and not just hang out there for a week and then start prep. I should be able to maintain that for 6+ months. And that's true tissue that I've earned on my frame. If you're taller, you need to be doing this without abusing drugs to get there, because you're going to be no good in a contest prep if you've just had the pedal to the metal the entire time away from the stage. Right. But he broke it down for each body weight. He's like, if you want to be a skinned out middleweight, you need to walk around at, between 205 and 210. If you want to top out the light heavies, you need to walk around between 230 and 235.
And it's got to look okay too. It's got to look like, didn't you mention something like outline of your abs or something in the article?
Yeah. Basically not abusing drugs,
quad lines,
not looking like a water buffalo, not abusing D-ball to get to that weight. So I've kind of had that in my head as like, I need to walk around at 270 for at least half a year. And then I think I would be ready to prep and work my way down. So when we're talking about the decision to prep next year, like, I just don't think I'm going to, at the rate I gain weight, I don't think I'll be at the mark I want to be at. And then my point, and a lot of people should look at this when they're looking something to consider whether to start a prep or stay in off season, is any time you're spending dieting is time away from growing, because you're not growing into the show. We've already established that. Is it worth it? Is it worth it in the big picture of your bodybuilding career and how long you potentially want to do this, to spend 6 months going the other way? When I was younger and I was more like, God damn, I want to get on stage. Like, yeah, it was. But now it's like, no, the stage will be there next year. There are other things to consider. Like, we are in a recession. Like, time away from the stage saves me money. I mean, off season's cheaper than prepping. So that being, if I basically use the top 5 of the big pro qualifiers as like do I think I could stand with those guys right now? It's a hell no in the super heavyweights. So just stay in off season. I think you just have to be able to be realistic with yourself. And then you need to keep enough people in your camp, your coach being number one, to be like, hey, if I asked you off air or on air, like, hey, do you think I could do well at nationals next year? You would be like, no. You know what I mean? Your standard of what doing well is, the answer is no.
Right. Do I think you could be top 5 right now with all these guys that are coming out getting ready for USA's super heavyweights? Probably not, Tommy. I love you, but probably not next year.
I have so much respect for the national level, because it's not the regional level. Like, it's such a big jump from regional to national level. And I don't, the last thing I want to do is spend the money to prep, invest the time, go all out, and then go get third call outs.
Yeah, the cost is a great one, to be honest. Like you said, like you were talking about, it might be 6 months away. That's such a great point. And I've always thought about it like that too, where your contest prep is just time away from making progress towards like your overall physique, like the overall, let's say, your silhouette, right? You're not adding to your silhouette while you're prepping. And like you said, that's probably, if you're doing things right, even if you have a calculated off season where you kept things within striking distance, that prep process to be really skinned out and early, or ready early, I should say, it should be 6 months, but then we're talking probably another 2 months or probably another 8 weeks to feel healthy and productive again after that show, if you're really peeled for bodybuilders. So, now we're talking about 8 months away. Like, let's say, you put a halt on your growth phase in April, let's say, you can't expect to be productive if you're getting ready for a show and you bring in your prep in April. You're not going to feel good and be building new tissue and progressing towards a better physique again, probably until January, to put that into like, context of the calendar. So, I think too, another thing to consider is, I think people enter contest preps a little haphazardly, where you want to have things in your life set up good, or set up well, I should say. So that's another consideration. And then also like having stability to where, I think this is a big thing. I know that we've talked about it off air, like people struggling with patience in the off season because things don't look any different. And there's not like this burning desire, like there's the external motivation of looking great on Instagram and getting check-ins from your coach that you're leaner and the scale's coming down and all this momentum that gets created in a contest prep setting. It comes to like a screeching halt. It almost feels in the off season. So people, I think, struggle with patience. But I think from both perspectives, as a coach and as a bodybuilder in a situation like this myself, one thing that I think really helps is like organizing and outlining your phases and your schedule, and like thinking through like what makes sense for me, both in terms of like taking the time to grow and look different and set up a health phase prior to starting the prep. And okay, how does this coincide with, okay, I want to bring my significant other on vacation, or this is when our anniversary is and we always go to the Bahamas, or any of these things. Like it should be a more calculated process to set up a good contest prep. But that long-term scheduling, I think you've seen my stuff, Tommy, like on J3U, like that's how John does it with all his clients. That's how I do all my clients, and how I do my own bodybuilding. And it's something that I found keeps me locked in for a long time, because there's not the same like romantic outlook about the off season as there is for prep. Even somebody like me, I'm like so super gung ho on bodybuilding. I love bodybuilding, but even for me in the off season, yeah, it's like almost not a bore, but it's just the same thing every day. So having these things outlined, I think, can like kind of objectively help you get through them. Is that something you do with your clients? And if so, or not if so, but I know that's something that you're doing with yourself too. So like, what are some of the considerations? Let's say somebody comes to you and they say, hey, like, I want to compete. I'm not sure, I've competed in the past. I'm not sure if I want to compete this year or if I should compete next year. Like, what do you think? And they say this to you. What are some of the things that you're considering when you have somebody that wants to work with you?
Well, to answer your first question, yes, I do break it down into phases. I think that is, that's how you keep the buy-in there. Cause now I have something, some short-term goal that I'm working towards we talked about having a deadline. Like, hey, we're going to go into this fat loss phase for 8 to 10 weeks, maybe longer, maybe shorter, depending on how you respond. But they're at least locked in on like, all right, I know what I'm doing the next 3 months. And then from there, but it's all part of the bigger plan. I think it's a lot easier to tell someone to break it down into phases than it is like, all right, your show's over in 2022. We'll do it again in 2024. Like, just eat a lot till you get till then.
Train your balls off.
Yeah. Train hard and eat a lot. Like, so
that was how I did all my off seasons when I was coming up. My first 3 or 4 off seasons, it was just like, I'm just going to eat until I'm full 5 or 6 times a day and really train my ass off.
Yeah. I was as many calories as I could bludgeon was my goal.
Yeah. Not suggested, not a suggested approach.
Not at all. So with someone coming on, like, I guess it depends on if they've done a show or not. But my advice has always been to live like a bodybuilder for a year before you start a prep. And then that way you're going to have some exposure to a fat loss phase, because you need to learn how to diet and train, how to diet and manage cardio and manage your days, how to manage your job and your personal relationships while in are you moody? How do you do on, with more on your plate than just off season? I think that's important to expose yourself to before, hey, we're in prep. Let's go for it. Like, and meanwhile, maybe you get to the stage, but you're divorced and you're almost about to lose your job by the time you get there. Like, was it really worth it?
It depends.
Right. So I do break it down into phases, and I'm very real with people. I think, man, it seems like 50% of the consults I have, I either talk them out of competing for at least a year, or I redirect them completely based off some of their answers. Like, hey, I don't know if you should dive into this world, because some of the things you're saying are I'm very skeptical that you're going to like this when what you're getting yourself into. And I've had that conversation with people that have competed, that I have prepped, where, hey, to take the next jump is like, it's a huge commitment. And I don't, maybe where you're at in your life and what your goals are don't coincide with that, what's required of that jump. We talked about being a full-time bodybuilder last week. Like, it is an all-consuming effort. It may be very boring and monotonous, but I don't think there's another sport that operates 24/7, 365 like bodybuilding.
No.
So that has
to be grueling, dude. It can be grueling mentally.
It has to be respected. When I think about some of the crazy transformations we've seen, like, do you remember when Justin Compton took that year off and just was a machine?
You remember all those pictures of him in front of that bird cage?
Yeah,
dude.
Those
are some of the wildest bodybuilding photos ever.
Yeah, so iconic now because they're not HD crazy iPhone.
Yeah, it's some crazy shitty quality. And he's just a big fucking bro. He's like a big white Michelin man, like peeled Michelin man, where it's just everything is round.
Yeah, I've been revisiting some of those photos recently, but I think a consideration that I really try to hammer into my clients, and something I'm obsessed with, is training performance. You have to be obsessed with getting better at training. And every single facet of off season, to me, should be driven towards improving training. Your nutrition, the amount of cardio you're doing should be to keep you at an acceptable body composition, so you don't get too fat to have good pumps, and so you don't get too fat to put yourself in a bad position when you do start prep. Your sleep dictates your training performance. Your daily movement dictates, the things I just highlighted a minute ago. But training performance is one thing. That's the thing you can measure very closely day to day. Whereas like your body's really not changing much. And I think on this often, and other coaches have brought it up, but we almost do ourselves a disservice by requiring weekly check-ins in the off season, because there's not much changing. I see the point of it when it's just for documentation, like, hey, we got picks every week. I can now look back like 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks and always compare. But as it's happening, I'm like, man, this person is just, they're developing like obsession with the scale. They're developing like, they think they're fat. They don't see anything. And you know how it is when you see your own pics every week. It's like, I've just become so tuned out to my own pictures that I try not to assess them too hard. I try to put them in like 4, 8, 12-week comparisons. And then I can see the effects of my training. But if you're looking at things week to week and trying to find like marginal places you're improving, you're really going to say, because like once you're in the depths of an off season, there's just not that much visual change happening. So to get this out of my clients, I really hammer home training performance. Like I want to know all the details about it. I want you to treat that workout as the most important part of your day every day, that training session. Prioritize the training session always. Like if you're beat down for one day for no particular reason, skip that day and just push everything back a day, because that's how important the training is in the off season. That is where you create the stimulus to grow. I mean, I think all the facets of bodybuilding matter 100%. But if I had to pick, you put a gun to my head, I'm picking the training 100%. All the best physiques we've ever seen, male or female, with the exception of a couple genetic anomalies, they all train their fucking asses off, man. And that's the people we're watching on YouTube, is the people who just train hard over and over and over, year after year. And I think that's the way to get married to an off season long-term, is to really just get obsessed with your training.
Yeah. Buy a big a whole fucking row of oversized shirts and fucking hoodies and go in and just be okay with knowing that like you're working on a long-term project. I thought it was interesting though, like you had mentioned, because I had never really thought to put like a number on it or how often it happens, but you had mentioned like, it feels like half of your consults or more, you're almost like talking people out of competing. And you're like, you're almost like, I'm sensing a lot of red flags here. I'm not sure if you're made for this. I'm curious, like what are some examples of those? Because I think it might help for the audience. Like if they're interested in competing, that's wouldn't be the craziest thing to hear that someone watching the show was interested in competing. So it might help guide the thinking for some people. Because I'm with you. There's a lot of times where I will hear or say things and I'm like, it sounds like your family or this promotion that you want or this job that you have. It sounds like all of these are the priority, and it will inhibit you to do this other thing that you say that you want to do at a high level, at least. So I'm curious, like when you walk through these consult calls with people, what are you hearing that maybe would steer you or steer them away from competing?
Right off the top of my head, the biggest one is, that very first question.
Is there like a recurring theme of ones that you see where you're like, right away, I know, like, hey, this isn't going to work out?
Currently, yeah. I mean, I think the number one, and I have people on my roster who have said this, so they're going to listen to this, and I'm not calling you out. Like, you're just guilty because you're with the masses. But when someone says that their goal is to go pro and they don't have maybe they haven't done a show, or they've done like one or maybe two, whatever. They're just, they're inexperienced. I think I'm all about unrealistic big picture goals, but if that's not met with the sense of urgency and the respect, like if you're going to say that, and then your first week on the plan, you missed meals, you missed cardio, like there was any deviation at all. I don't give a shit what happened. If there was one deviation and you said you want to go pro, no fucking way. that's not the behavior of a professional to do any of those things. So for you to say that, it almost is like disrespectful to what a pro card and what a professional status means in anything. For you, it's like the audacity, and I think because in our world in bodybuilding, as long as you have the money and can pay, you can tell all your friends and your family, like, oh, I'm going for my pro card. I get to do this show that if I win, I get my pro card. And they have no idea. They just hear like, wow, you're going to be a pro. And then the whole toxic positivity thing starts where they gas you up the whole way in. But I would say that's the number one red flag, because man, I think
isn't it even worse when someone says, I want to get my pro card, like my pro card, there's already an ownership to this card that they're entitled to.
Yeah. It's almost like, I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and go get my pro card. No big deal.
That's it.
It's like,
yep. It's just going to show up in the mail one day. Yep.
I mean, as an open bodybuilder, we've talked about this before, but you got 10 years. And then, my response is always like, I'm never harsh to people, but I am brutally honest. That's like my skill, is that, okay, well, on the way to that pro card, we have to do show number 1 and win an overall. So let's stop there first. And then that's our checkpoint, right?
Do you look like a bodybuilder when you walk around the mall? No? Okay, well, then this is going to take some time.
And I think about like wellness is a very popular division right now.
Yeah,
I've heard from multiple people, and I can see, with my own 2 eyes and what I know about physique development, like if you're a girl wanting to get into wellness right now and you have decent genetics, whatever, all that's all, context, but be prepared. That's a 3 to 4 year journey minimum.
I was going to say 3 to 5. Yeah.
Like, that's not just something like, oh, I saw my best girlfriend did a show last week and I want to do wellness and get my pro card. Like, okay, well, yeah, again, 3 to 5 years till we're really knocking on the door for that. And that's if you're adherent. That's if, like, how bad do you want it?
Right.
You know what I mean? This isn't like do your one prep and then take 3 months just haphazardly training and getting your macros.
Well, those are always the people, though. Those are always the people, it seems, that want to take 6-month off seasons and then expect that they're going to show up and look like fucking, Dorian 92 to 93. It's like, even for people that are nailing it, a pound a month at best while you're in a growth phase. But then I get comments on our YouTube video, like, or people send me DMs separately and they're like, no cheat meals in the off season. Like, that's miserable. You don't have to do that. And I'm like, okay, maybe you don't have to do that. Like, yeah, for what I'm trying to do, like, this is the quickest way to get to what I'm after. And it's always those people that, like, I had a guy that quit my training. The first thing that he wrote in his assessment, I want to be a professional. I want to be a professional bodybuilder. And then every check-in, there was multiple things that were changed or missed, or, hey, I don't want to do this, or hey, I couldn't get to tracking my blood pressure, or whatever the case was, every single time. And then he was like, man, like, you just take the fun out of bodybuilding. And I was like, you hired me and gave me the responsibility of creating professional level habits in your routine. And that was a responsibility I didn't take lightly. Obviously you did. Like, I shouldn't care more about, I shouldn't be trying to pull professional habits out of you when you came to me and told me that your goal was to be a professional bodybuilder. Like, someone that says that, I expect that they're already executing like a professional, or at the very least, if you're not, you're coachable. And when I show you what it would take to get there, you listen. So I think it's just something that people underestimate, like you said.
There is such a small window. We're talking like a 1% window for any excuse that would ever fly with me, if that's your goal. If your goal is to be the best competitor you can be, I do not want to hear one reason of why you didn't get a meal in, why you cheated, why this, why that. It better be catastrophic. Right. It better be like, I heard about it on the news because it was that big. You know what I mean? Like, these are just things that don't happen. You're not even going to like focus on these type of things. Like, it's like, I'm going to get my meals in tomorrow. No problem. I'm going to train tomorrow. No, like, this is just rooted into you, like your DNA.
I will say, to that point though, there are people that will hear this and they're like, bro, how is that possible? Like, how is it? You guys aren't just a machine. It's not the same every day. I will tell you this. I have people that write in stuff like in their check-ins that have said like, I want to be a professional bodybuilder. And it's like their variance, their level of variance is like, I was at a work event later than I wanted to be. So like meal 6 was 2 hours later than it normally is. Like, it's not, oh, I missed a meal. It's like, oh, I got everything in, but there was just a little bit of a deviation. Like, those are the things that I expect to hear in a check-in from people that are truly 100% invested in this, to the point that they want to they want to be a professional. That is how professionals treat it. Like, even if it's not pretty, everything gets done. And that's just not to be compromised. Like, you're not negotiating with yourself or with your goal or what your big picture like desire is physique wise. Like, you're not negotiating with that on the fly. Like, you signed up to eat 6 meals a day for the next 10 years. You're going to eat 6 meals. Like, it's not, oh, well, today, it's Billy's birthday and the kids had soccer this morning, or, my girlfriend broke up with me and I had a hard time. Like, I didn't really feel like going to the gym. Like, those things don't exist. You guys have to understand, like, that's not me trying to take the fun out of bodybuilding. I love bodybuilding. I love training. I love staying on my meal plan, all these different things. But that's just the cold hard truth of it. Like, it's not all going to be fun. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, there's quotes. I don't even know who it is or exactly what it is, but like, maybe Muhammad Ali was like, I hated every minute of training. But it led to me being a champion or something like that. It's like, you have to do shit that you don't, it's not all fucking sunshine and roses. Like, you want to be a bodybuilder. Like, it takes a rigid approach where it's the same exact shit all day, every single day. And then when life happens, you make bodybuilding happen around it.
Absolutely.
So that's just a great point.
That's kind of what Tyson, discipline is doing what you hate to do, but doing it because you love it. And it's like, damn, if that doesn't capture bodybuilding to a T. But I think another red flag would be, if someone's filling out a questionnaire and they really recently saw a friend compete, and it's like, all right, that's good. You're inspired. It caught your interest, but like, just how the mind works, like fleeting interest, right? Like, it could have been just this fleeting burst of like, I want to do that. And then like everything we're talking about, like, do you really want to do that? Like, if I explain to you what this process is, do you really want to take that on? Like, maybe not, based off our consult. And I'll take 30, 40, 50 minutes sometimes on a consult because I can be long-winded. But if I can save that person from going down a tumultuous path, because I've seen it so many, we've seen so many people ruin their lives that just don't truly love bodybuilding and love training and love this lifestyle like is necessary. And if I can save someone from that and save them a boatload of money in the process, that's a win in my book. So those are probably the top 2 off the top of my head. Like, but I mean, there's other things.
What about relationships? Like, if they mention relationship wise, that's got to be a big one for me, at least. Like, if I hear someone that's like, I will ask people that, like, if you're going to drop some heavy goals on me, you want to be a professional bodybuilder, you want to be a national level heavyweight, any of these different things. On my consults, like you were saying, like, we're both long-winded. That's probably why we have a podcast. But I'll get like into what that person's situation is. So I want to know what you do for work. Are you making your own schedule? Are you going to be able to go do 2 a days when shit gets hairy and prep? Like, what's your personal life like? Like, kids make it difficult. A significant other, especially if you're living with that person that doesn't like actively support bodybuilding, is going to make it very difficult. So those are all things I want to find out right away. And there's a guy recently, guy that follows the show, contributes to the show, said point blank, I want to compete, but I have some things coming up in my life. And if I go through these various plans in my life that I have upcoming while I'm prepping for a bodybuilding show, my wife is going to hate it and she's going to hate me. And I think that's awesome self-awareness, because then it's like I send him a message back and I'm like, man, hearing that, it's probably the right decision to not compete, because it's going to make things miserable for both of you. And it's not going to be an enjoyable process for you then. So, yeah, I think being self-aware, like of what your situation is another one.
I like to ask about social habits, namely alcohol. Like, because if you're someone who
Yeah.
is a regular drinker and like,
Yeah.
all right, well, that's, there's no real room for that.
Have you had
I'm not-
that? Have you had people that say they want to compete and they're like, oh, I have beers on the weekends?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. There's people that think like, that's what I kind of was getting. Like,
Man,
there are
that's
people
wild.
who think you don't have to make sacrifices because
Yeah.
maybe other coaches and the industry's so broad now that like this whole anyone can do it type mentality is like, it's almost detrimental because
It is.
I don't I don't want to scare anyone away from competing, but I also don't want to be like, yeah, just, as long as you give it your very best effort and try real hard. Like,
Man, we got into this because it wasn't cool, or like it wasn't something that everybody was going to do. Like,
yeah. And I've thought about that too, with kind of where we're at with how, the younger generation, and I do my very best not to ever look at them as like they're evil, because I find myself learning from younger people all the time.
yeah.
But as many times as I try to, have that perspective, I do probably get caught shaking my head in the gym at some of the shit I see. And I'm just like, especially because I'm on a college campus gym. So
Yeah.
I am, at 31 years old, I am in the top percentile of age in that gym.
You're the old head.
Yeah. And I try to be open-minded, and like, I'm on social
Yeah.
media, I'm filming my training. I get it.
Sure.
I'm not ripping my shirt off and posing in the corner after every set. I'm not doing that, but
Yeah.
it's a different time. It's a different, the people that are being idolized aren't Ronnie and Jay and Dorian,
Right.
and these kids might not even know these names.
Right.
So I think with the change of the times that's just, I have to respect that as a coach, when I, talk to these people, like, okay, you have your goals, you have your influences, you have your idols. Like, I'm not going to force you to be like me, but at the same time, like, there is a way to do this, and there's plenty of ways not to do this that at least aren't going to achieve optimal results. Like, what's the goal? Is the goal to bring your best and be in line to win? Then you probably need more time than you think.
And what's the goal division wise? Like, okay, like if you're 5'10" and maybe 200 pounds in shape, and like you love classic, that's truly what you want to do. Like, okay, you're probably your timeline and your scheduling, both with the near and long-term thought process, is probably going to be scaled down then versus somebody, that's a 5'11", 6 foot tall white dude that's skinny and has no appetite. Like, you want to be a big open bodybuilder, that might be 15 years.
Well, I think
like you and I, but if you want to, yeah, go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask you my thoughts on classic are ever evolving, just because it every show I go to, other than the pro qualifiers,
Yeah.
like at the local level, classic is 20, 30 guys deep in open bodybuilding. I mean, the show I was at this last weekend, there was like 9 bodybuilders. So
yeah,
with that being the case, at that level, I think to turn pro, you do have to have a certain level of genetics to fit the classic look. But at the same time, I do think from where it came in 2016 to where we're at today, it's no longer like that retro classic look. It's just bodybuilding with a height and a weight cap. And if you meet that criteria and you have the best size, symmetry, and condition, that's what determines the winner. It's not like, oh, that guy looks like an 80s bodybuilder, we're going to give him the nod. Like, no, it's not that retro. Like, and that's the distinction, is that it's not smaller bodybuilding. It's not skinny boy bodybuilding. There's still like Chris Bumstead still holds a fuck ton of muscle on his frame.
He could have been awesome in the open if that's
Terrence
what he was going to do.
These guys are, they have a lot of muscle density for their height.
Yeah.
are they freaks like the open? No, that's the distinction at the pro level. But at the local level, like if you wanted to, the timeline to do a classic show for a guy, like you just mentioned, is a lot shorter than doing well as an open. That being said, it's deeper. So you may take your licks and, even if you look good by yourself, you might still take 10th place. You might still take 8th place. And you might have to.
It's undoubtedly more competitive now than local, regional, and junior national level bodybuilding.
Right. Oh, 100%.
Like you were saying, 30 deep, there's no, I feel like it was kind of viewed initially this is just like a shortcut or a gimme way of getting a pro card. And in some situations there are like that. It does feel like that's the case because you're giving out multiple pro cards per weight class. And it's like, you look at who's winning and it's like people that maybe aren't necessarily super impressive, but I think there is something to be said for how competitive these classes are. Because like you said, the guys that are kind of just almost mindlessly genetically gifted, with shape and structure, there might be 15 of those guys in one class in a class of 30. So it's like, this is no joke at this point to win a classic pro card, depending on what show you obtain it at. It's pretty damn impressive. It is a shorter timeline though, in terms of what we're talking about, like considerations from one show to the next. If you are in classic, let's say you competed in classic last year and you have no intentions of moving to the open, and let's say you're near your weight cap already, and let's say you're an established top placer in classic shows, that could be an instance where it's you compete year over year over year, because you don't need to have an off season where you come back 12 pounds or 14 pounds bigger. So, as the audience listens to this and as we try to walk through these different points, that's also a consideration. Tommy and I, our first natural perspective is from the thought process of being long-term open bodybuilders. So then when you think about some of these other divisions, it does change your timeline. You can probably get away with shorter off seasons in classic. You can probably get away with staying a little bit leaner as well. It's probably a little bit more important to your image, in the off season and all these things. Another division I wanted to point out though, too, same deal, like you talked about earlier, is the entry point for wellness, for just muscularity in general. How much muscle do you have on you? Obviously, mostly in the lower body. But it's no joke. I've had to talk to a handful of girls that I'm you could do it. You have the shape and I see the way you train, all this stuff. It's just going to take 3 years. This is not I'm we can do bikini this year, or we can take the time to grow, not spend 6 or 8 months going through a prep process to land you in a bikini division. You want to be wellness. Let's just take three years to grow this thing. So I think also having all of these conversations with your coach, having good self-awareness of what you want your physique to be and where it currently is, can kind of, all of these different things can be used to kind of accurately assess how your scheduling and programming should look.
Well, I think not only is wellness heavily muscled in the lower body, but the conditioning too that we're seeing at the pro qualifiers
it's getting harder.
Pro level is
it's getting harder. Yeah,
it's not just big legs that are curvy. They're fucking diced, man.
Yeah, Renee last year. Renee last year had striated glutes. Yeah, and they were this is a little too, we think this is maybe a little bit too hard.
The glute tie-ins are similar to that of WPD, and it's weird because figure's the next step up, and it's almost like wellness is either on comparison with figure or harder. Right. So it is and
it's just a different look.
You need to really respect what the top, the top girls that are turning pro look like, because I mentioned the disparity between regional level bodybuilding and national level. It's starting to be the same for wellness too, because at a wellness show, at the regional level, somebody has to win, right? So that girl that wins she might have actually been more of a bikini fit, but because she was in wellness and that was the level of competition on that day,
she was just the best one there.
Yeah. So somebody's got to win.
Right.
It does not mean you should just jump the gun and go to the national level. You should really look at that top 5 and ask yourself, like, can I stand there with these girls?
Yeah.
And if it's between you and your coach and you break it down, it's like, you probably need more time than you think for wellness.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that division, honestly. I think
it's very cool. Yeah.
I think it's awesome. Because like you said, it seems at this point, figure and wellness are almost getting to like a similar standard. Conditioning wise, it just seems, at least this year with the way they've judged some of the shows. But it's cool that they're just like, hey, this is a specific look that we want. And like, we're, all the girls that are in wellness basically train their legs 3 or 4 times a week. Like, everything is tailored to make sure you look like you belong in that division. Which I think is interesting, because I can't say that any of the male divisions are necessarily like such a specific look. Like, it's kind of like, just, bring the best version of what you have. It's not like, hey, we want to see crazy overdeveloped shoulders more than anything. Like, just come in as crazy wide as you possibly can. Yeah. You would be killing it.
Isn't that kind of like broad taper and like a good midsection is like men's physique, right? Like the streamline.
Yeah. You're made for it, buddy.
Even that has evolved.
It has. Those guys are big, man. There's a couple of the guys. There's a couple pro men's physique guys over here in the Muscle Factory, and it's like, man, being in this gym over here, I'd get a first row look at a handful of different looks. Like, we have guys that are classic pros, we have guys that are men's physique pros, and then I have John and Renee in there too. And John's just fucking blown out, like 5'5", like just fucking walking around like mid 260s at peak mass at 5'5". So this is a big dude. But then you see some of these like men's physique guys that are pros. We got one guy in the gym, Jojo Gonzalez. He's fucking big, dude. Like big, like walking around like, and then it's like, I remember thinking of what the physique guys were. Like, my first show had men's physique, and it was like, I don't know, like Euro soccer boys, like that look good on the beach. Like, yeah, exactly. And then the guys now, like, man, they're big. So I respect all of it, man. It's just, depending on what division you're in and what you need to do for your physique, that will help guide kind of the schedule that you need.
I think, ultimately for every division, we can say that, like, genetics aside, let's not even talk about that, but you need to just respect the amount of size and condition you need to be able to achieve to take it to that next level, and beyond. If your goal is to go pro, we started this as like off-season considerations. And I think that's the biggest one, is just have a respectable timeline. And then honestly, you need to be honest with yourself. Like, are you the type of person that can lock down and like say, you know what, for 12 months straight, I'm not missing a fucking meal, I'm not missing a day, like everything will be militant? That sounds so extreme to say out loud. And if you're not someone who can channel that in, give yourself more time, because you have to.
I was just going to say, it sounds militant or that sounds crazy, but guess what? If you can't do it and you can't nail it every day, that 12 months just turned into 18 months.
Yeah. And it's not even a bad thing. If you're actually doing yourself a favor by recognizing that, be like, you know what? Yeah, I do need, the vacations. I do need like I have a family that I have to take on vacations. I got, summer baseball, this, and this. Like, I will be better if I take 18 months instead of 12 or 24. Yeah. I mean, depending on
I respect the hell out of that person. Absolutely. I respect the hell out of that person showing up, making sure, just doing what the big theme of this whole thing, the big takeaway is like, we're just advocating for people taking the amount of time that is needed for your personal set of circumstances to assure that you're going to look dramatically different than the last time that you got on stage. So if you're somebody with excellent genetics in a division that doesn't require you to be much bigger than you were the last time, you could do a 6-month off season and then come back and compete. If you're somebody like me, for example, I'm weighing in at light heavyweight as a 5'11" open bodybuilder, like I need to be fucking 30 pounds heavier the next time I get on stage. Thus, it's going to take me 3 years before I'm on stage again. So I think that's just the big takeaway is we wanted to kind of lay out what you should consider as a competitor or, potential future competitor. Like what type of thought and effort is going to go into creating a better look each time you get on stage.
I think as a competitor, and like we have people listening from all different states I don't even know like what the top shows are or anything. I know what the top shows were in Michigan. I now know what they are in Arizona. I'm sure you can say the same about Jersey and Texas and maybe some of the East Coast. Yeah. Like put yourself in a position when it comes to like picking a show is like, hey, what are the best shows year after year after year? Where do I stand to have the best competition? Those are the shows you want to put yourself in. So that's how I create my timeline, not with just myself, with my clients. Like, hey, the show we had the past weekend here in Arizona, the Dennis James Classic, it's one of the best shows in the state. It's probably the best if we're looking at overall quality, how it's run, competition, stuff like that. So if I know that and I got, someone's timeline is like, hey, if we're looking to do a show in June, we're going to do that one if you're local, and I look for that. If I take on somebody from out of state, I'm like, hey, what are our options? What do you have around you? Like if your shows in your state suck and you know that, be prepared to travel. Like I got a guy who lives in Georgia doing a show and he's 16 weeks out, but we're going to Tennessee because there's just nothing quality in Georgia in that timeline. And we had a goal to compete in that, October, November time area. Right. So we found something in Tennessee, we'll compete there. But that's how I work with my clients. Like, it's never just like, you're going to have a check-in and then I'm going to respond with, hey, let's start prep and let's see what, like, it's all calculated. It's all, if you're starting a prep working with me, we've been talking about it for a year plus. Yeah. It's not just ideally, it's not Christmas morning and I'm going to hit you with, okay, let's prep.
Hey, guess what today is?
Exactly. Like, and it sounds extreme, but that's the type of preparation I think you need to have if your goal is to be your best and bring your best. If you look at the people who I think do the best, it's the ones that hire a coach and work with them long-term. It's the ones who have their personal relationships and their finances in order. Their life isn't chaos.
Yes.
We've talked about that on a previous show and some on this. And then it's the ones who don't mess up during prep so they can set themselves up to the best way. And we talked about this. The best way to have a great peak week is just to be ready by peak week or before peak week.
Be ready 2 weeks out. Yeah.
Have a good support system and have your ducks in a row. If you're flying, don't wait till 48 hours out to get that flight. Like you're going to need to, like, you got all the way to the finish line. And then you, like we talked about, don't go cheap at the end.
Oh man. Or with a tan, fucking Christ.
Yeah. So these are all considerations I make in my off season. Like we were talking about me earlier, like, thinking about competing next year. And there's so many thoughts that go into that because it's like, okay, if the goal is to compete and potentially do USAs,
you got to start around like the new year.
Yeah. Ideally, prep probably starts at the end of February, right? Like,
sure. But I mean, the whole process of like, cleaning it up. And
So, but that has like, are you someone that can diet through the holidays? That affects your timeline. Is family time and holiday eating important to you? All right. You should probably account for what the damage you're going to do during that period. So it doesn't take away from your competition. I just think, periodization of your year, when you break it down, like I know, someone would look at your spreadsheet that you showed me and be like, wow, this guy's insane. But when I see that, I see like, he has total control. There's no anxiety about what phase he's in because he knows what he's working towards. And that's how I am too. I have to see the bigger picture. And what I found with clients is they do better. They have less anxiety and they're able to just maybe buy into what we're saying about long off seasons when I'm able to map that process out for them.
The big one, you just repeated it, but I was going to bring it up whether you said it again just now or not, was buy-in. Like that is such a great way. Like you're giving somebody the playbook, you're giving somebody the blueprint. Hey, we do things like this. This is the way that it's all going to time out. And then this is how it should look at the end. That's a big one. So yeah, I think all good stuff. I think we're probably at an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, we're close. I didn't look at the time when we started. Like every
I think
week,
we might even be. I think we might even be beyond an hour.
I don't know.
No. Yeah. All right.
We talked off air for a while before we actually recorded.
That's all right. So I think that's everything. I think a lot of good takeaways here for what people should consider before competing or doing their next show or all these things. So for Tommy Stiles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. That was the Thinking Man's podcast. We are out.